I can feel the blood creeping up from the heathens. Got will, got fight, got pride, got reason. If they
All right, so last Friday was Black Friday, and at the Peppermill, they called it Black Chip Friday, with a $100 chip being given out basically every hour of the day. By the way, my suggestion of subsequently creating Hockey Puck Wednesday didn't go over all that well. Anyway, I will say, if you are going to do this jackpot tax on every single pot that's played, that's the way you should give the money back. Hold these kind of extravaganza type days where you're giving away a whole bunch of money, because that actually brings people into the poker room that otherwise would not play. Whereas just giving someone $100 as a bonus when they get quads accomplishes absolutely nothing. So that's just one more thing the Peppermill, I think, often does a very good job of. And this was just the latest example. And this was the day where I had a couple of very interesting hands. It was a day where I was stuck $2,000 at my lowest point after I doubled up Ken Shamrock when I flopped top two pair and he ended up turning the nuts straight. It was also a day, as you can see here, when Reno Grinder made a $2,500 river raise and got his opponent to fold a full house. I would wager a very large amount of money that Reno Grinder had the bigger full house there, but he made a point to not show. So this hand comes when the straddle is on, and the cutoff, who is my main opponent in this hand, makes it 50. The legendary Mr. C, or Slick, whichever you prefer, is on the button in this hand and 3-bets it to 175, and I'm in the big blind on his left with ace queen of hearts. I'd like to make this call here. The cutoff makes the call as well. So with 535 in the pot, the flop is 789, all hearts, giving me the nut flush. I check, cutoff checks, and Slick fires in 4 black chips. I elect to slow play this bad boy. I'm hoping that either the cutoff, who, despite being a very good player, he can also be very aggressive and might make a move here, or the button, who is obviously a known maniac, might bet the turn big as well. So I smooth call, and sure enough, it's the first thing of those two that takes place. The cutoff makes it 1,400 with Mr. C on the button going out. Obviously, I have no other play. Can't slow play this bad boy anymore with the stack depth, so I'm putting all my chips into the pot. It's only actually a few $100s more after I do that. And even though he's obviously going to call with anything that he could possibly have, he obviously knew he was in bad shape and did not snap call, despite the fact that it only cost him a couple hundred more and was ultimately almost down to the dollar, a $4,000 pot. We agree to run this thing twice. He ends up having the 7-9 offsuit. So if any of you felt that me calling with ace queen for 175 was light, this is a look at how light things can get in this game. He has the 7-9 off, so I would just need to dodge a 7 or a 9 on 2 runouts to scoop this pot. And oddly enough, the board did pair on both runouts, but there was no 7 or 9 to be seen, and we end up taking down one of the biggest pots of 2022 after flopping the nut flush. I'll also point out that I actually thought this was going to be one of those amazing days after this, because against the same opponent, I got all in with my pocket aces against his pocket kings. We ran that twice, which, by the way, thankfully we did, because he ended up hitting a set of kings on both boards. Thankfully for me, I too hit a set of aces on the second board, so we chopped. But if that chop hadn't happened, which 82% of the time it's not going to, I would have had one of those truly unforgettable days of poker. Instead, I just booked a $2,000 Black Friday win. And that's how vlog 191 gets started. I'd get into the Peppermill about a half hour before the game would actually start, so
I used that time to watch a Crush Live poker video. This one was made from a recent game at the Lodge, discussing strategies for playing in wild and splashy games, something that will definitely help me out here at the Peppermill, and I'm sure plenty of you across the country as well. By the way, I'd always recommend CLP for the best live poker training available anywhere. I've been a subscriber since 2010, and you can get 25% off a basic or premium subscription for life just by using the link in the description below. We start off playing 5-handed with the first hand I play, coming when I had the King 10 offsuit and I flopped top pair, and would get 3 streets off a player who I had outkicked. Then I play a 4-way limped pot, calling from the cutoff with Jack 10. With 40 in, the flop comes King 10 deuce rainbow, and no one bets. The turn's a 3, and the hijack bets 35 here. I make the call, as does the button, and with 110 in, the river is another 10, giving me trips. The button isn't likely to pay off all that light here, so I think it's a spot for a less than half pot size bet. I decide to make it 55, and he snap calls, with the hijack going out, creating a $220 pot. I show my hand, and he shows ace 10 for a better trips. We get a straddle per usual, with the winner straddle being on, and middle position 1, who's a tough player, makes it 50. I have pocket 5s in the hijack, and I make the call, as do 2 others. So with 210 in, the flop is 10-10 deuce rainbow, and the original raiser bets 50. He's going to have a lot of ace kings and ace queens here, obviously, and I figured it was worth continuing on with 10s and 5s for that price. So I call with the others folding. And with 310 in, the turn is the king of clubs. And now he bets 125. Thinking about this, he's basically never going to have a 10 here, raising early position. Now, I'm not going to have a whole lot of 10s either, calling from the hijack, but I'll have more than he does. Down 400 on the day, I got 600 left in my stack, which felt like the perfect amount to shove over the top all in as a bluff here. So that's what I considered doing. I thought about it for a few more seconds before reaching a decision on whether or not I should actually do it. And finally, I made the decision. So what was my decision, you ask? Well, obviously, it was to do it. All in. So I jam all in, turning my pair of 5s into a bluff, and he goes deep into the tank, asking how I can possibly have a 10 here. He says that he has ace-king, though I never actually saw him show ace-king. But he said he had it. And after thinking about it a little more, he finally decides to throw it away. So the all-in bluff works to perfection in that spot. I feel that I've always run bad on monotone flops. What can I tell you? And this hand was no exception, as I flopped top set with pocket 10s, and the hippie, who had just jumped into the game, called my flop raise with ace-queen with the queen of hearts and drilled his flush on the turn, and I lost a $300 pot. I then called a raise with pocket deuces and flopped a set in a 4-way pot, but it seemed unlikely that anyone could even beat a pair of deuces, as they all snap-folded to my small turn bet. Over the next couple of hours, things just went miserably for me. I picked up pocket jacks, pocket queens, and ace-king, but seemingly got the worst possible runouts each time and had to fold all 3 hands. And the game was only getting worse, with 2 action players leaving and tighter ones coming in. So that game was pretty lousy, but the second game began developing, and this guy walked in. How much you got there?
Really? You want me to fan it? Well,
all right, that's a decent amount. Slick, ladies and gentlemen.
That should get me through round 1.
I switch games and add on a hockey puck. I'd waste no time getting into a big pot when I opened pocket 9s and called a 3-bet, as did 2 others. Unfortunately, I ended up losing the hand on an ace-high board. I did win a good-sized pot when I rivered a baby flush after flopping a combo draw, but my opponent ended up making a fold in that spot. But you knew that I would get into a hand against Slick, and sure enough, it would come when I picked up the premium holding of 5-6 of spades early position, and I raise it playing 8-handed, and 3 people call me, including him. With 125 in, the flop is 5-6-8 1 spade, giving me bottom 2 pair. I bet out for 60 here, and the player on my left snap calls. Slick then announces 260. Now, this could be a lot of things. The only question was, should I re-raise here or just call? And as aggressive as Slick is capable of playing, he's still likely to fold most weaker hands if I raise him here. And, of course, only continue on when he has me beat. And he, of course, is trying to tell me by that raise that he does have me beat. So I decide to just call, and the other player goes out. And with 705 in, the turn is the Jack of Clubs, and I check. My plan was to obviously call a good-sized bet here from him, as that's a pretty good card for me, a high blank, like I was hoping to get. But he decides to not bet, and the river comes out at 10. I figured I had to bet an amount that he could pay off with a hand like ace-8 or something around there in this spot. So I just bet 200, and he thinks about it for a second, turns over pocket sevens, which is definitely a hand that makes sense for him to have here, and ultimately tosses them into the muck. Don't feel bad for him, though, losing that pot to me, because, as Reno Grinder tells me, seen here wearing a very nice Niners jacket, Slick would go on to win a $20,000 pot later that day, full house over full house when he hit a 2-outer on the river. What can you say? He's a beast. As far as I'm concerned, the day would wrap up with what I'd consider a satisfactory result. Alright, gotta record this vlog exit video inside the car because it's just too windy for this camera outside. Interesting session. Ultimately booking a $566 win. That flush I hit there at the end when I took a flyer on the 3-4 suited, and then the hand with the 5-6 suited. Kind of funny how those are the two hands that end up making me the most money on the day, working out for me at the very end to get out of that game a winner. Wednesdays, what can you say? They continue to be fantastic here at Peppermill Reno. I've kind of joked that Wednesdays are the new Saturdays. That's obviously not entirely the case. I am off of work this coming Saturday for the first time in as long as I can remember. There's just no weekend newscasts, so I don't have to work. And I think I'm going to play some Saturday night poker, which I have not done here in a long time. So my hope is to have at least one interesting hand from that session to bring you as a postscript to this vlog. All right, this might qualify as a mid-sessions update, as I am indeed recording a second section of this vlog on a Saturday. You saw what happened on Wednesday. I was able to go all in on a complete bluff, then I won a couple of hands late, and I manufactured a win despite not really running all that good on the day, but the idea of running bad really became apparent the next 2 days. That right there is a look at what I cashed out for after buying in for $1,500 yesterday on Friday. But the pain started on Thursday. I showed up to the casino after dropping my son off at preschool. The game, as it typically is on Wednesday and Thursday mornings, starts out pretty decently, but it got tremendously worse in a hurry. And at that point, I was stuck about 400, and I decided, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to wrap this session up early. I'm going to go home. I'm going to watch my Vegas Golden Knights, and then I'm going to come back later at night where the game should be better. So I booked that $400 loss, went home, watched the Golden Knights lose a heartbreaker in Pittsburgh. Then I came back, played that second session, and how did that go? Well, twice as bad as the first one, as I booked over $1,000 loss in that session. And then I came back on Friday, which was yesterday, as I mentioned, and that's when things were a complete disaster. The big hand came at the end when I turned 3 10s with the jack kicker up against 3 10s with an ace kicker against really the only guy in the game that was given any action at that point. So I ended up busting out. So that right there is a look at the last couple of days for me. Can this Saturday night session bail us out? By the way, if you ever wonder what my opponents ever say about me when I'm not in a poker game, I was sent this video.
Feliz Navidad. Bendeach is starring dead. Bendeach is starring dead. And he's headed to his car. I want to wish you a Merry Christmas.
At least it's a Tesla, right? Oh, and while we were on the subject of me being discussed when I'm not there, my apologies to the guy who was watching the vlog and had to explain the beginning of the last video to his wife.
Cocaine and hookers, my friend.
So I'd show up to Peppermill at around noon, hoping to get into the second game when it came together. Before I'd get a seat, I'd get about 10 minutes of hands in the Carolina Poker Club on the ClubGG app. But then, that second Peppermill game would ultimately develop, and we'd get it rolling. With the 10-20 format seemingly being a thing of the past, Table 5, the table I like the best, is once again being utilized for a 5-10 rock game. And it started out as a lineup that looked to have a lot of potential. I'd get on the scoreboard early, raising pocket sixes and getting a 5-high flop, on which I took the pot down with a bet. I didn't play a single hand for the next hour, and then I picked up the 9-10 of diamonds in the low jack and made it 30. The cutoff and the button, who in this case is Mr. Z, make the call, and with 95 in, the flop is 10-8-3, 2 clubs, 1 diamond. With top pair, I decide to bet out for 50 here, and the cutoff folds. The button, though, thinks about it for a minute and calls, and with 195 in, the turn is the ace of spades. Obviously a lousy card for me here, but I could easily still be ahead. I didn't want to just check call and be in a complete guessing game against a guy coming off of a $22,000 win when I got to the river, so I decided to just bet out for $75 here, hoping that he'd call, but obviously not going to be disappointed if he were to fold. To my disgust, he picks up $165 and slides that into the pot. Didn't feel like a spot where he'd be bluffing me, as I'm going to have a lot of aces, raising this hand pre-flop and then betting the flop and seeing the ace on the turn, so I throw it into the muck. We get a $10 limp under the gun, and I pick up ace-king in the low jack and make it 45. That limper ends up being my only caller, and with 95 in, the flop is king-jack-9 with a couple of hearts, giving me top pair, top kicker, and he checks. I bet 55 here, and he thinks about it for a second before calling. And with 205 in, the turn is an offsuit 5. He checks. I bet 100 this time, and he thinks about it for a second before mucking. That's a much better result than I'm used to with that hand, but would not be the last time on the day I would be dealt it. I'd continue to struggle to pick up hands, but one player won a very big pot, turning quads against a full house. I then 3-bet to 90 with pocket tens and got 2 callers to a king-jack-jack flop, and my hopes of finally winning a decent-sized pot were quickly dashed. By the way, take a look at the pit on a Saturday night at Peppermill. You guys think this place is making any money? Holy crap. Anyway, I'd play 3 hands over the course of the next 2 hours, and true to form, as these past few days have shown us, I'd lose all 3. And I'd move to the game on table 1 in hopes of turning things around, stuck $500. I would then pick up ace-king of diamonds, middle position 1. I'd make it 40 over a +1 limp. The cutoff makes the call, and it folds back to the limper. He's short-stacked, but decides to still complete here. And with 135 in, the flop is king-6-3, 2 clubs, giving me top pair, top kicker once again. +1 leads out tiny here. He only bets 20, a very unusual thing, and you'll soon see why he did it. I raise to 85. The cutoff actually gives this some thought, but ultimately settles on a fold in this spot. So it's back to the limper, who decides to jam all in for about $120 more. Obviously, I am making this call with ace-king here, so we have a $545 pot, and I'm basically drawing dead as he shows a set of sixes. So the struggles with ace-king, as was once discussed in maybe the greatest YouTube comment in bendeach vlog history by Ligaf the Indifferent, when he talked about why ace-king often really struggles to be a profitable hand in cash games like this. It's a hand where it's often difficult to get action from weaker hands. Often you're crushed, as I was in this case, or in the previous hand, I had him crushed and he got away from it. It's something that, as I've talked about on this vlog, I've struggled with for years, and once again, an unfortunate outcome with it today. I've often as well discussed the importance of extending the sessions where things are going well for you and ending them early when things are not going well. And I think you can already guess what I decided to do here. All right, cashing out, wrapping up here on a wet, rainy night in the north parking lot of the Peppermill, booking an $814 loss, wrapping up probably the 3 worst consecutive days of poker on the year, down about 4,000 for the 3 days. And it was kind of funny. I looked at it, I was going into this Saturday thinking, I don't really want to play today after the disaster that had been the last 2 days. But I said to myself, this is the only opportunity I'm going to have to play on a Saturday night in I don't know how long. Actually, I think I may have another one at the end of the month. But the point is, I almost never get to play on Saturday night, so I wanted to try to take advantage of this opportunity to turn things around. But isn't that always how it goes? The day where you don't actually want to play. Like, there have been countless Saturdays over the years where I'm just like, oh God, I want to be playing poker and not working. This was one of those where I was like, I really don't want to play, given how bad things are going for me the last couple of days, but I decided to play anyway, and I paid the price. My buddy Gary, by the way, seen here in a picture of him, me, and Bugsy, in which inexplicably I'm the only one not wearing NFL gear. He always tells me, when you're on tilt for a day, just look at your results for the year. And I think I'm going to do that when I get home tonight to try to feel better about these last 3 days. That'll do it for us tonight, though. Hit the like and subscribe buttons if you're new to this channel. I genuinely appreciate that. And follow me on Instagram at bendeach. And we'll see you back here next time.
I ain't gonna give up. Got too little time, I'ma live up. Head down, push forward through the tough times. Cause anything worth doing is a tough climb. And I ain't gonna give up. Got too little time, I'ma live up. Head down, push forward through the tough times. Cause anything worth doing is a tough climb. Cause I'ma live life for the fight, yeah, I'm here to get it. I got drive, got sight, always have a vision. I go by at night, I be in my feelings. I'ma be fine, need time, and I'll soon be winning. I live life